What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh, and today we are out on the trusty Surron Ultra Bee, and we're going to give the Sirris Suspension a test on the track. Before we jump into today's video, I want to thank the sponsor of this video and every video you will see as it pertains to the Surron Ultra Bee or Light Bee, and that is Electrix Moto. Electrix Moto is our e-commerce site where we sell all parts, pieces, and components for your Surron Ultra Bee, Surron Light Bee. We also have bikes on there. Anything you purchase off our site, if you watch a video, you get the code ROAM. It'll save you 10% on literally anything you want. Just hit the link in the description and have yourself a good time. Before we get out on the track, let me try to get out of the way here. We installed this weekend the Sirris F43 forks, and I wanted to just take the bike out and give it a test on the track. I know that this tune is more of a trail tune, so we are keeping it simple today and sticking to a smaller track. That way we don't really mess anything up. It is said that you were supposed to give this thing 5 hours of good ride time before you decide to mess with any of the settings that come factory from Sirris, so that's something to take into consideration. But the setup that you get really does ride plush. We'll get into some of that when we're on the track, and I'll talk you through some of the things that I've noticed since I've installed it and been riding it now for, I would say, about an hour and a half. So I have some good info, and I think it'll be helpful if you're considering putting these forks on your Surron Ultra Bee. So let's get started in eco and get used to the track. I rode it a couple times when I got here just to see if I noticed anything funny. Checked all the torque specs on the bike itself, and you know, one thing I will say about this suspension, now it is the trail tune, and the trail tune is pretty much what you get right out of the box. The MX tune has not been released yet. The hard enduro tune has not been released yet. So anybody who is purchasing the Sirris suspension, whether it's from us at Electrix Moto or somebody else, you will have the trail tune. So what is the trail tune? Well, prior to purchasing your suspension, you're going to need to provide rider weight. And rider weight should be calculated with your gear on. The tune that I have is a trail tune that is suitable for a 170-pound up to 210-pound rider with gear. So that fits, I think, in my opinion, that does cover a lot of people. Most people who ride these bikes are probably in that same category. Now let's talk about the way the suspension feels and what makes a trail tune different from an MX tune or the hard enduro tune. All right, so what I've noticed with the trail tune in comparison to the factory shocks that you get on your Surron Ultra Bee is that they are just a lot more plush. They really are soft. The best way I can explain it, and I was telling my wife this the other night, it's very similar to driving a Cadillac after driving a Honda Civic. Now, that is not all good if you're used to the suspension that comes factory on the Ultra Bee. And the reason I say that is the suspension on the Sirris tune it's a lot more plush, which means it's just soft. It's very, very soft. And they say not to change anything for the first 5 hours of riding the bike. So let it break in before you start making any changes is basically the way they put it to you. And honestly, that's fine, but I can tell you right now, out of the box, this tune is too soft for me. I want a little bit more rigidity in my suspension. I want to feel it a little bit more than what I feel right now, because every time you go over a bump, it's like a speed bump. but very soft. It's like, you know, imagine going over a speed bump in a car when that car has really plush or good suspension on it. So depending upon what type of rider you are, what you're used to riding or what you prefer to ride, I don't necessarily prefer riding the track. Sometimes it's the most convenient way to get in a lot of laps and a lot of seat time, and it's pretty consistent. You can work on cornering, you know, there's just a lot of stuff that translates well to the style of riding that I like to do. So, but if you're looking for a good woods trail style setup, I would still say that this setup that they come with right now is still a little bit too soft. Now, I weigh exactly 175 pounds, and with my gear on, I can't be more than 200 pounds, and I think that's probably overdoing it a little bit. But the reason I say that is any more than 185 pounds, 190 pounds on this suspension, and I think you would have some problems with it bottoming out. Now, I'm sure that they've tested all this stuff, but I'm just giving you my impression based on the hour or so that I've ridden it. Okay, so we just bumped this thing up into sport mode, or I'm sorry, daily mode, and I wanted to give the track some laps to see how it feels with more power. It means the bumps are going to be heavier, you're going to be hitting the bumps harder, and I just wanted to see what that looks like and what that feels like on the bike in daily mode. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I very rarely ride this bike in sport, simply because I think it has more than enough power in daily, especially for this smaller track. This is a much smaller track, it's not a full-size track, so you don't have enough space to open it up. And that's kind of how it is in the woods too for me, is that I don't really have enough space in the woods to be opening it up all the way. So I kind of just keep it in daily. It's more than enough power, it conserves battery, and it allows me to have a good time. So last time I was here, I ended up blowing out my ankle on this jump over here, and it's because I have a hard time with the throttle control. My gloves, if you've watched any of my other videos, then you've probably heard me say in the past, my gloves kind of stick to the grips, which means definitely I kind of get stuck in situations where I have my hand wrapped around the throttle, but I try to let go, but I can't let go because I feel like I'm stuck, which is definitely not a good feeling. So I have trouble with this throttle. I know not everybody does, but I definitely do. So if you do, leave a comment. I would love to know how you kind of mitigate that. All right, now that we got some laps in and I'm feeling good about it, let's talk about the installation a little bit. I'm not sure if you've watched any of my other videos. I do have an installation video that you could go watch, and it's not a hard deal at all. It took us about 2.5 hours to install the forks. Now, we only installed the R43 fork. We did not install the R46 mid suspension yet because I wanted to give this bike a test with just the forks, just to see how it goes, and honestly, just to know each piece, how it like really impacted the bike's rideability. But I wouldn't say you need a professional to do it. If you're looking for a professional to do it, you can get with us at Electrics Moto. If you're local to Columbus, Ohio at all, we'd be happy to install it for you. If not, you know, with some basic hand tools and a little bit of patience, you can probably get this done yourself. It does help to have somebody or to know a little bit about what you're doing before you start taking the whole forks off and completely disassembling the front end of the bike, because there are some things that are important to know. I don't want to go into those today, but I think the biggest issue somebody could have, I just blew that rut, is simply stripping a screw. I think that's the easiest thing that people who don't really know how to work on stuff could get themselves into, a stripped screw, and that could cost you more than you probably want to think about. So but overall, it's not hard. It's pretty simple, straightforward. But if you're looking for somebody, a little bit of help, a little bit of knowledge, we'd be happy to do it for you. All right, so before we close this out for today, let's talk about, is it worth it? I think that's a big question that a lot of people ask, and they want to know, like, is this $3,000 investment worth it? Because we're talking about a bike that, depending upon where you got it, who you bought it from, between $6,000 and $7,000 for the bike as it sits. So we talk another $3,000 in suspension. We're up to $9,000. I'm sure you got wheels and tires. That's another $1,000. You're at $10,000. If you plan on putting a new controller on it, that's going to be a couple more thousand. So before you know it, you're at a $12,000 bike. And you know, it depends on how you ride. I'll say this: it is premium moto suspension. The feel of this suspension is not like a KKE. I have not ridden EXT on my bikes yet. I've not put them on there yet, so I don't know what that's like. My son has a completely custom built moto suspension by a suspension builder that was done for his race bike here in Columbus, and that suspension feels a lot like this suspension. He got on this last night and said that is some of the best suspension I've ever felt. And I think for those of you who understand what moto suspension is supposed to feel like, and depending on the type of riding you have, but more importantly, depending upon your budget, if you're just looking for something to ride and have fun on, and you don't really care about all that, your Ultra Bee in its stock form will do completely fine, no questions asked. There will be no reason for you to put anything on there except for some different tires, you know, things like that. But for the guys who have the extra money, like to spend it, but also want to have like a really plush, premium, true moto suspension, then yes, it's worth every penny. I couldn't imagine going back. I don't know what that would be like, to be honest with you. Now that I have done that, and I have, you know, graduated to a better suspension, well, there's no way I could go back now. But I will say this: I am going to be changing some of the settings here really soon. I am going to be adding a little bit more stiffness and rigidity to the suspension, because quite honestly, to me, it's almost too soft. Now, I have not rode it on real trails yet, so I don't know what that's going to do to it. That may keep me here, because this is, ooh, almost went over the bars. This is, you know, my only bike. This is the only bike I ride. So, all right, I know that was long-winded. I apologize. If you guys like this style of content, and it was helpful or interesting, like it, share it, subscribe to Electrics Moto Co. on Instagram and Instagram and YouTube. We will offer 10% off of anything that you buy on the site, including bikes, if you use the code ROAM at checkout. So I don't think anybody else has that kind of deal for you. If they do, let us know, and we'll be happy to match it or compete. But I got a couple more laps left in me. My son's practice is almost over. I hope it was informative, and I will see you on the next one.